Thank you very much for joining me. My name is Gordon McQuoid. I'm a pre-sales engineer or consultant at Kallidus. My background is recruitment. I once upon a time was a recruiter, implemented ATS systems in the organizations I worked with. I then went into sort of online job boards, candidate attraction, so had a lot of experience with the likes of Indeed, sponsored advertising, those sorts of things, before finding myself implementing and working on the software side with ATS systems. So hopefully today I can just impart a few little nuggets of information around kind of recruitment marketing and feeding that ATS. So some of the elements that have changed over the last few years and some of the things that are hopefully coming to make you a little bit more aware of, and maybe perhaps revisiting that strategy of attraction and really looking at it from a marketer's perspective. So what is recruitment marketing? And in the context of what I'm going to talk about today, thinking as a marketer, we're going to be looking at the kind of top of the funnel, so the inbound, and spending more time on that side of things before we start to go into the kind of outbound, which is the middle of that recruitment funnel. So keeping your candidates warm or people within your talent bank warm. But the top of the funnel, quite a lot has changed in the last few years when we look at this. So what recruitment marketing used to be. So, 5-10 years ago, you used to be able to just advertise a job online, put it on the website. Indeed came along, it would go onto an aggregator, and then you started sort of posting a few things on social media. But there wasn't a huge amount more. People weren't able to track the metrics. There weren't the tools and things available like they are today. They're not expensive tools, things that you could just be using to be a little bit more smart, a little bit more savvy in terms of tracking some of the information, really understanding where things are coming from and what's working for you as an organization. So essentially we used to put a few things out there and spray and pray, I think was the term a lot of people used to use, and just hope that they were going to have candidates in it and you would get some results back. But where are we now? So there have been so many different tools and things available. I mean, this is just, search engines, programmatic advertising, and we can see how much that's kind of changed in terms of the landscape, and how much that's going to change as well in the next few years with the likes of ClickIQ being acquired by Indeed. So that really is a sign of kind of the things to come if Indeed are acquiring a programmatic advertiser. So no doubt, those will be things and tools that you'll be able to use through Indeed, and they're looking to widen out that sort of branch further. And what's also confusing, and it is often kind of overlooked, I think, is the fact that a lot of your aggregators are also your social media. So LinkedIn is aggregating jobs, Glassdoor is aggregating jobs. So they're aggregating, but they're also providing other services. You can also pay to post on there, which you didn't used to be able to do. So years ago, Indeed purely was only available with sponsored ads via advertisers' job boards. You couldn't just go and pay for a sponsored ad on there. It then sort of branched out until you had sort of more money or bigger budgets, and they went to those. Now anybody could set up a sponsored ad on Indeed and run a program on there. Likes of social media, so all of the sort of posts and things you can do on there, the sponsored posts, and the way you can track that as well. It was, in process of preparing for this, I went on a couple of kind of corporate sites just to kind of see what they were doing. And no sooner had I looked on the IKEA jobs page, 2 days later on Instagram, I had something trying to draw me back to apply for positions with an Instagram sponsored ad to go back. So you can see how some of those bigger players are already tracking and retargeting based on people visiting their web pages. And that's only going to filter down to smaller organizations to be able to do the same in the not too distant future if you're not already trying these sorts of things at the moment. So it's a very busy space. In terms of, a great quote here in terms of, if you don't see yourself as a marketer, you're in the wrong profession. So recruiters need to be having that kind of mindset of tracking and getting down to the nitty-gritty of, feeding that top of the funnel and understanding what's working for your organization. So at the top of this recruitment funnel, we're going to look at the sort of things that you can do in terms of, what are the key kind of areas that you can focus on. So you've got to make it as easy as possible for your candidates to find you. So using as many of those channels as you can. And that is as simple as just going through some of those key definitions, and we're talking about two key things. And again, looking at this from what a marketer would use in terms of their definitions, the kind of two which I'm not sure many recruiters perhaps look at, is search engine optimization. So with the advent of Google for Jobs, which launched last year in the UK, that now has thrown a whole new mix of the way recruiters can start to actually understand what marketers have been doing for a number of years to get their jobs to rise higher up on posts. The things like Indeed as well, obviously it's an aggregator, but that is a search engine, so understanding that user experience. Some really interesting things around Indeed when it comes to sort of their advertising. So we've had a number of customers who have been tracking some of these metrics and having a look at this. And one really interesting example is if you had 2 jobs on Indeed, one of those was posted manually on Indeed with an easy apply, and one was being taken from a feed or automatically, organically scraped from somewhere, the job that was posted manually will always rank higher on Indeed. So it's really interesting to start to test that out and go, actually, if you're using an ATS and you're trying to sort of bring your candidates in there, Indeed are still sort of favouring positions that are manually posted over what's being organically scraped on there. So you're going to see more ATSs integrating with Indeed for that quick apply, the same way you can do that on some of the job boards and things now. And Google. So Google hasn't even started its kind of sponsored ad program. So it's purely just taking in that data. And some of the things that Google are doing, and they've said, and that the things that they would favour, are trying to make that kind of user experience better. So that whole journey for the candidate. Because it's so convoluted with all the different ways that a candidate can get to a post, sometimes they could find an ad on Glassdoor that then redirected to Total Jobs. From Total Jobs, it's then passing you back to the ATS. At that point, they've had to log into Total Jobs to get the redirection to then hit the candidate's website. It's not a great user experience. So what Google are trying to do is make that experience, and not just a user experience from using the device and understanding the website design and that user journey. It's about reducing the number of clicks for a candidate from an aggregated job straight to the employer website. So it's hugely important when you're looking at the likes of Google for Jobs and Indeed that your jobs on your website are made Google for Jobs friendly. It's a simple process of metadata for them to be tagged up on, to be able to crawled by Google and found on the Google for Jobs search. So in terms of some information and things on there, in terms of the Indeed sort of sponsor side of things, Indeed are obviously after more clicks, and the relevancy of that information isn't always accurate. A number of searches I ran on the Indeed sponsored managed to bring back sort of C++ engineers when I was looking for an HR job in Cheltenham. So you can kind of see that the information, the way Indeed were kind of presenting that, didn't really quite match up. And that was not giving the right information to the candidate at the right time. So I think where we're going to see a sort of move across is that Google for Jobs and that experience they're providing and ranking that employer website highly. They're not just going to be focused on who's paying the most for a job ad or targeting the wrong candidates. It's much more focused, it's much more specific, and they will be ranking the employer website more directly, which means you're getting this organic traffic, which you used to get with Indeed a lot more easily. So by switching that focus and also being aware of the impact for Google for Jobs, you can get a lot more organic traffic than you may have done previously with Indeed. Just curious, with a show of hands in the room here, how many people know that their jobs are coming up on the Google for Jobs search for definite? So that's 3, 4 hands in the room. So, I mean, that the awareness level there is, it's not difficult to do. Go and see if you can implement something like this. Your ATS provider should be, again, providing that service on the Google for Jobs side of things. And it also starts from the user experience around simple things like job descriptions and the formatting of those job descriptions. And again, the information that's provided in that, providing enough information and enough detail around simple things like layout. So you're going to find with Indeed, perhaps not as big a factor, but the likes of Google and how they rank user experience and all of the social factors on there, having the correct layouts, having bullet points, having different job titles and putting the right keywords in there, probably going to play more of a role than it did previously. And people are going to go back to what they were probably doing and sort of keyword stuffing things on job boards years ago, and the similar sorts of tactics, you'll start to see that playing a bit of a role with Google for Jobs as well. So badly formatted information, the eye, what candidates are able to see, better formatting, better formatted job descriptions and information will also help at a very kind of basic level. But again, social media, so getting your jobs onto social media and the candidates looking for posts. So we can see the numbers are, growing all the time in terms of the amount of candidates looking for positions on there. I still think that where some of the social media platforms, and when I say that, more sort of Facebook for Jobs, I don't know if anybody actively recruits on Facebook for Jobs or has seen how that kind of works. Again, just useful show of hands. Anyone had success with Facebook Jobs and recruiting so far? So again, no. The experience on there is completely different. So the quality of the information and the matching on Facebook for Jobs has been so poor in terms of just setting up different job titles and trying to understand how that works and how easy it is to find that position is just, I think they've got a long way to go. I really do. It's slowly improving, but in terms of where Facebook for Jobs are, I think there's a lot to come from them in the next probably 12 to 18 months. In terms of Glassdoor, obviously becoming a huge factor now. I don't know how many people kind of constantly check their Glassdoor reviews. Again, useful to show hands in here. How many people are looking at Glassdoor to see? Yeah, a lot more people. Hands up in the room. That's becoming a huge factor. They've been on the rise now for probably the last 3 or 4 years. More candidates going there. There's search visibility, and obviously they're also aggregating a lot of jobs where before that wasn't quite the case. So I know we've kind of touched on Facebook for Jobs. But the experience, it's not redirecting back to an ATS. It's allowing you to be able to communicate via the app on there. The search and the relevancy, I think there's a lot of work to be done on that still. LinkedIn career pages. I don't know how many of you were aware. Obviously, if you've got the recruiter license, you can do certain things on the pages. But LinkedIn last week made an announcement and put live a new kind of beta page, essentially, or a beta version of what you can do with careers pages. So again, this is targeted to the owners of those pages. So if you as recruiters were logged in, may not be as obvious that some of these changes are happening with kind of LinkedIn at the moment. And they're really pushing for people to, again, they're trying to compete with Glassdoor now in terms of information, feedback that you can get on those pages, using multimedia, so things like video becoming very big on there, trying to highlight those kind of employer stories, and really kind of bringing that to the forefront just on top of those job ads. So something I think we need to be very aware of. I think with the likes of LinkedIn, Facebook, and Indeed all kind of almost coming together to take on Indeed, who's been quite a force the last few years. So interesting to see how that progresses. Paid advertising. So interesting just to see a show of hands, the number of people doing sponsored ads on Indeed. So yeah, quite a few. That's good. So on the paid advertising things, obviously, fairly straightforward. When it comes to the likes of Google, I don't know if any of you ever tried paid ads on Google for your vacancies. No? Okay, great. Because you would struggle to compete with the job boards and the way that Google favor sort of the relevancy and the way those job boards have built up their kind of relevancy on Google. So in terms of what we're going to see in the future, I think, is we're going to see Google for Jobs doing a similar thing around the actual ads and doing something that they do on AdWords at the moment, but it's going to be focused on the actual jobs, and you'll be able to bid quite similarly as you do on Indeed with different positions. But where this will play a factor is retargeting and using really simple campaigns that you come up with content through Facebook, pulling people back. It's really quite straightforward to be able to add a tag now onto your website to be able to retarget. And with the likes of Facebook, if people have visited your careers page, you can then drive that awareness and bring them back to your website. So just thinking about when you go onto a retail website and a few days later they're showing you products on the left-hand side. Really powerful for grad campaigns. I've seen this used and driving numbers on graduate campaigns with the retargeting on Facebook ads. And really interesting, as I mentioned earlier, to see people using Instagram and some of those big brands now starting to use Instagram a lot more for those things as well. And programmatic advertising. So I think this is the one to watch out for in the next kind of 12 months. Again, just really useful show of hands. Anyone using programmatic ads at the moment? So again, three people hands up in there. So again, those acquisitions, TMP acquiring, I can't remember the name of the programmatic advertiser, but there have been 4 acquisitions, I think, in the last 3 months by organizations in this programmatic space. So I think that we're going to see more happening here in terms of people spreading out their media cost. It's been happening in marketing agencies now for a number of years where this has kind of been going on and people getting more targeted and more rigorous with their spend and being able to, bring things like the use of AI into that as well. So big things happening in here. If you're not using it now, I would probably say the next sort of 2 years, most people in the room will probably be finding them using it in some way, shape or form, even if it's through Indeed in the way that they manage sponsored ads and retargeting and things with the programmatic advertising, if I can spit that out. And again, just back to sort of user experience. So mobile devices, everyone knows that majority of candidates now are applying via mobiles. They're using it to apply for their jobs, but they're also using it to search in terms of getting information about those employers, looking at their social media credentials and things. So just worth having, a lot of time marketing are very involved with that. But as a recruiter, thinking of yourself as a marketer, you really do need to be trying to get involved with your marketing teams to make sure that you have fair representation on those social media channels, because those candidates are going to be on there and they are going to be looking at you as an organization. And that brings us nicely onto data and conversion rates. There are some really simple things that you can do, as basic as just getting your marketing department to add in your Google Analytics. Again, just useful show of hands, how many people use their Google Analytics account via marketing? So again, just a few. There's so many insights that you can get around where your candidates are coming from, how long they're staying on your pages. You can get more advanced by sort of tracking certain clicks on there, trying to understand, the drop-off rates on some of these now, I think it's 80%, which with a good user experience and good data, you can start to really kind of improve that process, and your Google Analytics will give you a really good sort of insight and just useful to have a look on there every once in a while. The other thing you can do are things like bit.ly links, so short links, understanding how many times if you shared a job, it's free to do. You can go on bit.ly, generate a link, put that on social media, put that on some of your other job channels and things that you're using, and just start to track how many people actually click that link. Because sometimes getting this information from an ATS and building that report can actually be quite a task. Not everyone has lots of time to sort of sit in the reports all day and try and draw this information. But by using something as simple as a bit.ly link, you can start to track clicks and just understand what's happening with your positions. And obviously understand that applicant drop-off rate. When it comes to the outbound recruitment marketing, so this is again becoming a much more sort of specialist area, with people using their ATSs, building up their talent bank. So once you've filled that top of the funnel, obviously not everybody is going to be relevant for you today for that position. So it's really just about the tools and the things that are available now and that's coming in regards to the middle of that funnel. So once you've had that application, you're evaluating those candidates and then you're targeting them again. So things like skill classifying your data and setting up automated emails to go out sort of every 3-6 months to your candidates, ensuring that your data is fresh and up to date, that candidates are updating the database. I think we can get a lot better in terms of the automation around that, and I think the tools are on their way. They are available now, but they're very expensive if you go down the sort of specialist route for your outbound campaigns or managing those talent banks with automation. But it is just going to be another couple of years, and again, I think most of us in this room will be setting kind of drip campaigns to candidates, notifying them of, not just job alerts, apply now, more sort of feeding through proper information about the organization and trying to get them to buy into your employer brand and have those number of touch points. I don't know the stat, but I'm sure there's quite a lot of information around how many times a candidate looks at a job ad before they apply, or how many times they look at a brand and then engage with that. So if we can be better and provide the tools, and I'll put my hand up, I think we need to be better providing recruiters the tools for that outbound marketing piece, and I'm excited to see what we do with that in the future. So inbound marketing creates those outbound opportunities. Having all of that information out there on the internet, using all of those channels, will help you recruit further down the line and build up that employer brand. And just keep focusing on your talent bank and stay in touch with them. A lot of that can be automated, but just make sure you don't lose that human touch. So using mail merge templates, it's really easy now to be able to sort of humanize some of those communications without them being, a bit drab, and keep those candidates engaged. And again, 38% of candidates are more likely to accept a job offer if they've had a good candidate experience. And that experience is all about those communications, some of those touch points throughout that period. And again, a lot of that can be automated, but it just goes to show that whole journey from when they see an ad to when they complete that application really needs to be thought out. And we've got a download there, which gives you some tools and things that are available to be able to start to look at that strategy and just highlight some of those points that I've discussed today. So, are there any questions?